We do begin with those jobs numbers. In June, 125,000 jobs were lost. The bulk of them government census jobs, which were always meant to be temporary. Private employers actually added jobs, a total of 83,000. But many economists were hoping for bigger gains. The report was extremely disappointing, coming after 5 straight months of job increases. And though the unemployment rate went down to 9.5%, that doesn't mean fewer people are out of work, just that more and more people have become so frustrated they're no longer even looking for work. In fact, 7 million people have been out of work for 6 months or longer. That's the most ever. So what does this all mean? Joining me now is Wall Street Journal Chief Economics Correspondent John Hilsenrath and the CEO of Challenger, Gray & Christmas. That's the nation's oldest and premier outstanding consulting organization, John Challenger. And John Hilsenrath, I do want to begin with you. As we heard, the unemployment rate went down, but that's only because people stopped looking. They gave up hope. And in fact, a lot of economists think that we could go up into 10% territory as far as the unemployment level. And the president was out yesterday, though, saying that the economy is moving forward. How is that possible?
What the president was saying is that the economy is heading in the right direction. That's right in the sense that it's still expanding. It's not contracting anymore. But the problem right now is that it's losing momentum. You know, every economist that I talked to this week was either revising down his growth estimate for the second half of the year or thinking about revising it down. And, in that sense, we're actually heading in the wrong direction. Right now, the economy's problem is momentum.
And meantime, we know the stimulus is beginning to fade. The country's appetite for additional stimulus is just gone. And a lot of businesses and a lot of CEOs I'm talking to now are saying that some of the policies coming out of Washington are counterproductive for them to come out and increase job growth. Tell us about that.
Well, I think you put your finger on something that's really important, and that's competitiveness. You hear a lot of CEOs who don't have confidence. We saw this after the last recession, too. CEO confidence became the really big issue. It was holding back job growth. And CEO confidence is pretty low right now. Ironically, CEOs are sitting on a lot of cash, but they're worried about policies coming out of Washington. They're worried about what's going on in Europe. Every time one of these guys goes to a hearing in D.C., they're getting beaten up. Confidence is taking a beating, and they're not going to create jobs until they're feeling more confident about the outlook. And
I'm glad you brought that up. John Challenger, I do want to bring you in now. Tell us what impact this has all had on job placement. We heard that 83,000 jobs were added, but it appears that these are to the larger, more international companies, not the small mom-and-pop companies that are so vital to our economy.
Well, you're just right. It's the small businesses that usually drive the economy out of recession that really create most of the jobs. And those small businesses are having a very difficult time getting the loans to grow their businesses and hire more employees. So people are finding jobs in some of the strong areas of the economy like healthcare, leisure and hospitality, or restaurants and entertainment. But there's just not a lot of them out there.
And quickly, I also want to keep with you, John Challenger, and talk about this new string that we're seeing of people sitting out on the sidelines, out of work for 6 months or longer. A lot of concern about retraining, that they're losing some of their valuable job skills. What do you have to say to people at home who are sitting out for such a length of time now?
Well, that's one of the biggest concerns, because the longer you're out, the more employers say, well, what happened? Maybe I ought to hire someone here who's more current. There are newer people on the market. So if you're out for a long time, I think it's time to go back to work, even if it's not what you wanted. It's not going to compromise your ability to find a better job later. But sometimes you got to take a job and not just sit out there waiting. But a lot of people, just as you say, have been leaving the workforce thinking there are just no jobs there for them. And that's not true.
Yeah, more than ever. 7 million people have been sitting now for 6 months or longer. That is very disappointing to hear and disturbing. Thank you so much for joining us, gentlemen.